Prominence is centered around the invasion of the peaceful lands of Minecraft by a world-ending force called the Void. Watch as my friend and I try to save the world from this threat. In this video, you will see over 50 hours of gameplay showing off a new skill tree, new weapons, new gear, new mechanics, and of course, new boss fights. And my friend spent a good amount of time hollowing out an entire mountain for us to live in. First things first, I loaded into the world where my friend was waiting for me. And luckily enough, we spawned next to a village that wasn't too far away, so that's where we headed first. And we were quickly welcomed by the village folk, and since I joined a little bit late, we headed to bed immediately. And when we woke up, we were given free reign to anything in the village, and we took whatever we wanted. And in one of the first chests I looted, I got extremely lucky and was able to get an epic rarity sword called the Ember Blade. And this would actually be my main weapon for a majority of the playthrough, and the rest of the village didn't provide me anything else extraordinary, but I did manage to get a lot of early game food. But with both of our inventories absolutely stuffed to the brim, it was now time to find an area to live. And on our journey, my friend spotted something, and without telling me, he immediately towered up and eventually dropped some water down for me. It actually turned out to be a village in the sky. It was pretty cool to explore, but it didn't provide us with anything useful. And there was a spring launcher in one of the sections that nearly managed to kill us both. My favorite part about the village was honestly just being able to jump off into the water after we were done. Continuing our journey, we also came across a few pillagers. The only reason this is noteworthy is because while trying out my new sword, I realized that I light myself on fire while using it, and this would be a problem for obvious reasons. But I was thinking if I could just get my hands on some fire resistance potions, then this wouldn't be that bad. But I would eventually stumble across a way better strategy. Now, I messed up the audio of my friend's voice somehow. None of his voice ended up recording, and I swear he's a real person and I'm not schizophrenic and just envisioning him. But after arriving at a certain area, he had a vision. He wanted to hollow out this entire mountain and build everything inside of it, and I thought that sounded phenomenal. But actually digging out the mountain didn't really sound too good to me, and admittedly so, I didn't really help him out too much. So we placed our stuff down nearby and got to work. So immediately he began to mine out the mountain, and I went to go mining, which is something that I love to do very much. And a very useful tool this mod pack adds is a hammer, and that allows me to mine things in a 3x3x1 area. And this mod pack also adds a bunch of different resources, and I was able to craft sapphire and different gem equipment, which was pretty cool to me, as for so long I was confined to the normal crafting of vanilla Minecraft. I went to drop off some tools for my friend, and as you can see, this idea of his was going to take a while to complete, and this was just the narrowest part of the mountain. But back to mining, I continued to mine anything I came across regardless of whether or not I had any clue what they were used for. And down in the mines, I came across some sort of rest area used by other miners, and this included a very special surprise. Ah! There's fucking mimics in here. We also allowed ourselves to teleport between places, but only if we had previously explored it. We weren't going to be teleporting into unknown territory, and this is just because we want to have fun and don't want to have to keep running back and forth, so thank you for your understanding. But if you don't like that, then don't worry, because when I went to go see more of what my friend managed to do so far, I accidentally fell to my death. But thankfully this wasn't a hardcore world, so I could keep going. I had another little oopsie that I thought was funny. My friend asked me for some more of those hammers that were useful for mining, and instead I made these hammers that you use for fighting. And that was a complete waste of iron, which was pretty useful for us at this stage of the game. I made my friend a sword that was pretty cool as a keep up the good work type of reward, and I was once again scared by a creature known as a ghoul. And they look pretty scary, but they're actually pretty weak. My friend actually got scared by the same creature later on. For him, it was especially scary because he was mining and saw him, so he ran around a corner and he wasn't seen again when he looked back around. One bad thing about playing this mod pack is that the Essential mod, which lets you host worlds for your friends, wasn't compatible, so we had to resort to using LAN worlds, which don't keep any waypoints you make. So I had to replace mine every time we loaded back in. But since my friend was the host, he didn't have that problem, so I love that for him. And back to mining for diamonds, I made some diamond hammers, which I made sure were the correct ones this time around. And if you want to see what it took to hollow out an entire mountain, be sure to check out my friend's video on his experience playing this mod pack. And we were starting to run low on food just through regular consumption, and especially because of how fatiguing ult mining is. So we found some cows to lead back to our base. I put down a few of the stragglers for some immediate food, and that's where I was able to receive my first skill point. And skill points are only gained from combat XP. and this allowed you to upgrade your skills in a multitude of ways. I opted to go down the Protector's path, which mainly allows me to have more hearts and healing and also be a better melee fighter. We led the cows back home and made them a makeshift pen, and an awesome yet basic item that this mod pack has is a feeding trough, and this allows you to place it down and fill it with whatever ingredient, and the nearby animals will come eat from it and reproduce without you actually having to manually feed them. And it wasn't until now that we realized we weren't part of a team for all of the quests, so my friend went ahead and invited me to his team, which was the Diddy party? But everybody knows ain't no party like a Diddy party. And with our cow farm, I was now able to make a backpack. I also took some books from the villages nearby, which I needed for an enchanting table. Now, in normal Minecraft, this would be enough to be the max level, but in Prominence, this was far from it. My first enchantment though, I was able to get Fortune 2 on my hammer, and later on I enchanted my Ember Blade and got some pretty decent enchantments on. I then stepped foot into the Nether. I wanted to get some ancient debris, and I was able to do that pretty quickly, but I now needed a smithing template in order to make netherite. I started exploring and eventually found this mini bastion-like structure, and it didn't hold a smithing template, but it did give me a legendary longbow. And a little while later, I found this other structure that held piglins and blazes, which was good because it gave me skill points, gold, blaze rods, and even some ancient debris. But most importantly, I got a smithing template.
Hey, yes!
In the same chest, I found my quote-unquote first eye. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I'll find out later on, and then I'll also go over it with you guys. I made some netherite ingots back home, and thankfully I pronounced it right. But I was looking through the recipes that you use the ingots for, and I found something that would allow me to get permanent haste too. I didn't know what this gleaming component was, but one Google search later and I was on my way to get some. I was successful in the search for gleaming powder, but sadly Fortune doesn't work on it and I'm only able to get one piece every time. One more look through the recipe log and I was able to find something that would take me to the next level. Using that same gleaming compound, I would also be able to craft a glove with permanent strength. But more importantly, I would also be able to craft a necklace that gives me permanent fire resistance, and that would be perfect for my build. No need for fire resistance potions anymore. So now it was time to get all the materials I needed. But 9 hours later, it was time to call our first session an end. The crazy part is, during this mod pack playthrough, playing for 9 hours isn't even the longest playing session we had. We were some real degenerates on the days we didn't have to go to work and actually contribute to society. Next time we logged on, I was able to get my Necklace of Hades, so now I had fire resistance and this would be my build for early game pretty much complete. Of course I would need to continue to upgrade my armor and level up further, but my weapon choice was now solidified. Next, I tried to use the schematic mod and place a house down for us since we are essentially homeless as of the moment. But for whatever reason, it would never work for me, but it would work for my friend. Maybe because we were in a land world, I'm not really sure what the problem was, to be honest. We originally had the idea of building a village outside of the mountain, that way everyone who lived in the mountain would be hidden in plain sight. But because I couldn't use any schematics, we quickly threw that idea out. In this mod pack, there are a ton of mods that not only enhance the vanilla world, but also add new things entirely. And naturally, I wanted to go and explore some of that. So I took my blue glider that my friend made me and I headed out. First, I found this cloud in the sky that had some unique resources on it, but they weren't too useful. The cloud was more useful being a launch pad for me, and this allowed me to cover a lot of distance very quickly. I then found a decayed village that had a mutant zombie in it, and this would have been more scary and more surprising to me if I hadn't already faced them before. And where have I faced them, you may ask? In my playthrough of the mod pack Cursed Walking, which I made a video on, and you should go check it out if you enjoy this video. Even if you don't enjoy it, you still should go check it out for me. Who knows, you might enjoy that one. And speaking of playthroughs, I found some kobolds. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but this reminds me of the neck creatures in Valheim. My same friend and I have almost 200 days worth of gameplay recorded already, and it's just sitting in my vault, so let me know if you guys would be interested in watching a Valheim video. And for the first time I came across a mutant creeper, and I carefully shot it with my bow from a safe distance, and when it died it left with a boom like Datara. It also left behind a creeper egg so their family name wouldn't be forgotten, but I quickly destroyed the egg before it could even think about hatching. I continued to glide through the world, finding some insignificant structures along the way. Eventually, I found something that I knew would be good. It was called the prisoner's quarters. Excitedly, I went back home to quickly clear my inventory and backpack, then I immediately headed back. I stepped through the portal and that led me to a rundown dungeon filled with prison cells. You can encounter some prisoners who are still unlucky enough to be serving their sentence still, so I made my way through the dungeon enacting the death sentence on anybody who came across me, and I was sure to loot anything useful. And eventually I found another portal, but my friend grew tired of this mountain project of his and he wanted me to wait before moving on. So of course I waited for him and we stepped through the portal together. After emerging through the other side, we were now in a completely different area, and we followed the path laid out for us. What was once a nice forest was now an area where heinous and horrific atrocities were committed. Now it makes sense why the prisoners were still in prison, for this area was much worse. But we made our way through, vanquishing any evil that was in front of us and taking any valuables, and I managed to get quite lucky and came across multiple unique weapons, such as the Leviathan and Storm's Edge. And in the same area, we eventually made our way to an underground dungeon which hosted a mini-boss. We were able to defeat them pretty easily, and upon their death they dropped a vine rune which would be useful for exploring other areas. There was once again another portal that we were going to enter, and before I entered I must have ate a mushroom somewhere because on the other side I was way up in the air and just falling, but my friend said I was right there with him, but I managed to regain consciousness and go back into my own body. Now this place was known as the Ramparts, and this area consists of towers that rise high in the sky, and the guards here actually retreated because they cannot hold off the prisoners any longer, but the current state that the towers are in is evidence that the retreat did not work too well. We carefully made our way through, being sure to mind our steps while simultaneously fighting off any foe. Engaging in all of these fights this early on really left us with some wear and tear, as I had to craft new armor at least 3 times, but now that I'm looking at it, I had enough iron in my backpack to make an anvil, and I could have saved a bunch of sapphires and rubies, but c'est la vie. It was now time to set foot onto the next area, which was named the Black Bridge, and on it we came across our first real boss, named the Concierge, and here he guards the bridge. My friend had a tougher time than I with this boss fight. Because I was resistant to fire, I didn't even know the boss used fire too, but my friend definitely noticed as he burned to death. But he came back to help me out, and it looked so simple and unimpressive jumping over this fire attack he sends out, but in my head, it was the most beautiful thing ever. It was like a scene straight out of a movie. After we slayed the boss, we headed back home because it was a long journey. Now that I'm reading the wiki, it says that there's even more areas after this bridge, but I don't believe we saw any more portals, so I'm not sure how you would have to go access them. But once again, c'est la vie. And back home, we placed down some diamond chests to look at everything we got from our journey, and it was a lot of stuff mixed with some very good things mixed in. And one day before my friend and I were gonna play, I just hopped onto a creative world real quick to make a few builds for our world. But he got home earlier than expected, so I only managed to build this nether portal that was shaped like a sword, but it looked so amazing too. And so when we actually got on, my friend asked me to help him hollow out the mountain, and I did help for a little bit, only around an hour or so, but that's because I wanted to upgrade my hammer so it would be more efficient. So I spent the next hour and a half getting all the necessary materials I needed to make a hammer that would mine in a 5x5x5 area. It's a lot more efficient now, but after only one more hour of mining, I did not want to help out anymore. So I dropped in my hammer for him to tackle the rest by himself, and sorry about that, baby. And looking through all my footage just makes me wonder how much mining I actually did, because now I wanted to upgrade my armor, so I needed to mine more ancient debris. And now I was able to upgrade my chestplate all the way from a ruby one to a netherite diamond one. And it had some lackluster enchantments on it, but most importantly, it had mending, so I never had to worry about it breaking on me. But I guess my armor improvements weren't as good as I thought, because when I went to go help out my friend from a gang of wizards that invaded our mountain, that same so-called friend one-shot me with his weapon, which I won't read the name of, but you most certainly can. And this is where we really realized that I couldn't use any schematics, because I wanted to place my nether portal sword down, but once again I was met with it saying the schematic file expired. Now I made this one and didn't grab it off a website, so I was especially upset. So I had my friend grab a blueprint of it and he placed it down for me. I still had to grab all the materials and use the cannon to build it though. And with my fire resistance, I felt pretty at ease exploring the nether and grabbing everything I needed for the build. I did die to a blaze guardian because I didn't know that they blew up on death. I redeemed myself by putting down a mutant skeleton and picking up all of his boners off the ground. But after that, I had everything I needed for the build to be completed, so I placed everything in the chest and I let this cannon shoot every block into place. And while that was happening, I actually helped out my friend a good amount and helped restore the mountain shape and covering up any holes in it. And now let's look at the build in all its glory now that it's done. Look at this portal and tell me it doesn't look good. You a big fat phony liar if you say so. My friend gave me back my hammer, so of course I had to do some more mining. I also did some spell binding and I didn't quite understand it, so instead of figuring it out and increasing my power level, I simply just moved on. And if you notice from my inventory, I spent some time gathering everything needed to give my friend his very own netherite diamond chestplate. I used one of his mending books on it, and I don't quite remember why I named it Chastity Belt, but I did. And with that upgrade, we headed back to the prisoner dungeon, because now that we had the vine rune, we were able to access a part of the dungeon that was previously inaccessible, and here hosted a boss named Conjunctivitis. And instead of treating the severe case of pink eye with eye drops or antibiotics, we simply chose to cure it by stabbing it with our weapons. And within 4 minutes, we put down the boss. And as a reward from the quest log, we were both granted Sharpness 5 books. And feeling motivated after that boss fight, I opted to do some more exploring in the hopes of completing more quests. And eventually my friend wanted to tag along, and somehow he managed to fit an entire rowboat in his pocket for easier water navigation. But upon entering the boat, we crashed. Not into any land or anything, but our games literally crashed. But after exploring for a while, I eventually stumbled across this icy ocean which had quite a few points of interest nearby. First up was this tower-like structure filled with illagers which gave me yet another unique weapon. Next up was this shipwrecked boat with which I guess you could consider pirate illagers, and after defeating one of them, they dropped a shell horn that allowed us to summon a boss who presumably used to be the captain of the ship. And after plundering any goodies, we made our way to some nearby ice and used the horn.
Shit, this is hard.
Immediately, I was stunned by how cool the health bar looked, and since this captain was outnumbered 2 to 1, they were scared and hiding from us. We had to search for like 10 minutes to find out where they were, but we eventually managed to find them underneath some ice. And it seemed like it was going to be easy for us at first because we managed to do quite a bit of damage, but the same could be said about us. There were plenty of times where we were both nearly killed. They had this cool attack where they managed to spin us around in this cyclone thing. And flirting with death quite a few times, we persevered and managed to put the boss down without dying. Upon their death, we now had access to a map that would lead to an ice maze, and there was also a key that would open a chest in said ice maze. Underneath heaps of ice, we found a house of some sort that was protected by spirits and even some big eels, but inside there wasn't anything too useful. I found one unique weapon. I also found some golden moths and let them free. Not sure if I was supposed to do that or not. And after unlocking the special chest, I found more echoes of ship graveyards, a god apple, another unique weapon, and even a collectible painting. And while exploring another structure, I accidentally started a fire, and instead of putting it out, I just let it burn. It was a little bit more fun trying to loot everything before the whole place burned to the ground. And we found one more structure that was so annoying that I just have to bring it up. This structure was just filled with an absurd amount of strays, so that meant you were constantly moving super slow. You hit slower, and when you did hit someone, it was for less damage than usual. But by far the worst part about this whole thing was that the loot was absolute buns, so I was more than happy to get up out of there. We then spent some time exploring some more new structures, but there was nothing else really noteworthy. My friend actually found a map that led him to a deep dark city, so I teleported over once he was there. And we managed to defeat the warden by tagging on and off of him. It was a kind of cheesy strat, but it worked. And this mod pack actually adds another dimension to explore after defeating the warden. So we activated the portal and stepped inside. And on the other side, we both got the achievement Below the Bedrock. And that was definitely true to the name, as once we were there, we both started dying to the void. Now obviously we felt as though this was some bullcrap, so we headed into creative and gave ourselves all of our stuff back. And I won't even lie, for the inconvenience I also gave myself a mending book. And not wanting to have to deal with all of this again in case of another bug, we also went ahead and turned on keep inventory. And now that I had another hard-earned mending book, I wanted to make the use of it naturally. So I immediately went and grabbed everything I needed to make myself a netherite diamond pair of leggings and boots. So all I was missing now was a good helmet. And now with my new set of armor, I wanted to go check out this boss whose health bar popped up while I was mining for netherite. Its name is the Decaying King. And this was so cool to me, just rising out of the lava unscathed and then gliding over to his domain. And there was no way he stood a chance with all of my new upgrades. Okay, it's because my gear isn't enchanted the best, okay? It was a lot easier when he wasn't aggroed on me and I could just give him back shot after back shot. And on his death, he dropped his sword, his heart, and even his soul. And with the soul from the boss, I was able to craft something called the Sword of Freyr. You could use it like a normal sword, of course, but it also has an ability where it would just hover around you and attack anyone who is hostile. You have to be careful though, as it has its own health bar, and on its death, if you didn't have an inventory slot available, it would just drop on the ground and you wouldn't know where it was at. And I almost skipped over this, but thankfully I remembered. My friend placed down this windmill that he created inside of the mountain using the crate mod, and we used the simple storage mod that you may have previously seen to hold all of our items in one place, and it looked way cleaner than just having a bunch of chests outside. And I don't know about you guys, but it always takes me so long to decide to finally build a house or something, and by that time I just have so much loot that I need to move from one location to a new one. I eventually gathered enough resources to make a different glove artifact, and this one would give me a strength boost whenever I had it equipped. I would switch it out for the other one that gave me haste when I needed one boost as opposed to the other. I then headed over to the mountain to point out any holes that we missed, and my friend would head over and patch it up. I got the easy roll, but it was still important nonetheless, and now this huge project was finally seeming to come all together. And after that, we wanted to explore a new dimension in the mod pack, so we decided to throw an ender pearl into a beehive and we were teleported to a dimension called the Bumble Zone. We tried making our way outside, but there was seemingly an infinite amount of bees that kept coming after us, and we kept putting them down. This was dumb, as every time we hit one, we would reset the timer that made them mad at us. After realizing this, we just burrowed our way into some honeycomb and waited out the timer. And now that we made it outside, there was this place nearby that had some chests which were very tedious to get to. And in one of them, I believe my friend found some sort of compass of some sort that led us to a dungeon in this dimension. I don't really remember, to be honest, but I followed him and we made our way there eventually. And this dungeon was by far one of the most annoying things in the whole mod pack. We were quite over prepared for this section, so all of the bees stinging didn't do any real damage, but I was poisoned nearly constantly, and the loot wasn't anything spectacular to make up for it, but eventually we managed to make our way to the queen bee. The queen bee has interest in certain items for trading, and depending on the interest she has, she could give you some good rewards. But I didn't really have anything to get the upper echelon of rewards, so I only gave her basic things like honey items and even nearly a stack of diamonds, but in the end I ultimately got nothing. And feeling like this whole thing was a waste of time, me and my friend both decided to stop the production of any new bees. I immediately went back to the nether to do even more exploring, and I pretty quickly found this mystic level rarity holy wand, and already it was better than anything in the Bumble Zone. And this was cool, but neither one of us was exactly the mage type, so it was more so used as a collector item. There was another Decaying King, and I had the bright idea of trying to dethrone him of his title by myself. It didn't go too well, as I ended up dying several times, and I even had to leave him be and go mine quartz so my mending armor wouldn't break. And hearing about how much this boss was whooping me, my friend decided to teleport to me and help me out, and this birthed one of the funniest moments to us that we quote quite often.
I'm here.
And I hope y'all found that clip as funny as we did, but watching it back was really surprising to the both of us. If you noticed, my friend said I'm here, but we both could have sworn he said I arrived, so I think this is just another clear case of the Mandela effect. Nonetheless, I still love that clip. With the two of us, we were of course able to put down the boss like we have previously done before, and we both went our own way once again. Continuing to do some more exploring, I found the last of the mutant mobs, which was the mutant Enderman, and I personally think they are the coolest one of the bunch. There was this part where I got enveloped in a darkness and my camera was all shaky. It was like I was in a genjutsu. I managed to overcome that and put the creature down, and this actually led to me finding a structure that I haven't seen before. Now, I thought this place was just another cool looking structure, that is until I mined this block in the middle pillar which stood out from all the rest. That's when the health bar popped up and a new boss appeared. My friend immediately teleported over to help me out. It was a big hand that's main attack would just slap you full force. The boss was honestly pretty easy and I probably could have done the fight solo, so we put it down quite easily and were rewarded with some pieces of ancient debris and another eye. After accidentally progressing through the quest log out of order, we wanted to go and defeat the boss who was intended to be beaten beforehand. I was exploring the nether still while my friend was fighting the night lich. Once he found it, I teleported over. He inserted the soul stars into the altar and allowed me to place the final one. The night lich then spawned and he was the most annoying thing. My range damage wasn't the best and he would rarely get close enough for me to do melee damage, but luckily my friend was able to carry me and do most of the damage himself. Next up, I wanted to find the end stronghold, that way when we wanted to defeat the ender dragon, we would already have it ready for us to step into the end. I went to use an Eye of Ender and it told me that it didn't want to be used, and I thought it was weird, but I didn't think anything of it really, so I just used a different eye that we had to find the stronghold. And this stronghold was ridiculously far. I had to travel more than like 2,000 blocks to find it, but at least I got it out the way early. With the end portal now marked, I made my way back home to help out with the fun task of transferring all of our stuff from the scattered chest outside to everything inside the windmill. And now we not only had more chests placed down for even more storage, but it just looked way better now. And while defeating piglins or breaking gold in the nether, there is a small chance that the mini boss piglin beast can spawn in, and I was lucky enough to encounter one. Now he stood absolutely no chance and I was able to put him down without breaking a sweat. And I thought it was a little funny that after I put down the boss, the nearby piglin could not care less and was just more so interested in the gold that he dropped. He's all about his money, and for that reason I should have spared him. Next up was some more improvement for the mountain, and we didn't want to have to replace all of the stone with grass, so what we did instead was feed the already patches of moss that was indigenous to the mountain, and I think it looks pretty good this way. Plus it's a nice change of pace using a different block. With the floor now covered in moss, it was time to fill out the inside. First, my friend and I went into a creative world to build a few things that we wanted to have. This way we'd be able to get the blueprints for the create mod and we're more easily able to fill it out. And first up was a stall design to hold the villagers for trading. We never actually did use it, but I did build it nonetheless. And the create mod has to have a problem with land worlds because I tried copy and pasting my build down to see how multiple of them would look and the game crashed. I didn't think nothing of it the first time, so I tried placing it down again and once again the server crashed. That's when it really sunk in that there was a problem. And next up was a villager statue design that was going to be used as a sign of good luck and worship for the villagers. And it cracked me up trying to figure out what design to use for the eyes. All of the versions of glowstone made me die laughing, and it still does. But eventually I settled on using banners for the eyes. Then, since there was a statue for the overworld, I of course had to make a statue for the nether to put next to the nether portal, and I thought this design looked really good. The fire really makes it pop out to me, and the overall details of the design just makes me want to worship the devil. In Minecraft, that is. Did anyone else watch the Mayanite series growing up? And originally we had the idea of having different levels of segregation by class, so we'd have small houses for the poor on the floor, bars, and different bigger houses for the more wealthy higher into the mountain, but we scrapped that idea for some reason. So first I made this hobbit style tent, then there was this small house with a porch, then I made a small cottage style house, and finally I made this bigger circular style house. And here's a sneak peek into the tree that my friend made. It's made out of a different wood, and that's because we had this idea of there being a mystical tree being so revered by the villagers that nobody wanted to use the same wood out of respect for who or whatever made it. And by the next time I logged in, my friend went ahead and did a little bit of building off camera. I came back and there's this grand spiraling staircase with lanterns lighting all the way to the top of the mountain, and he used one of the hobbit houses to make a balcony to overlook everything. And we forgot to add a hay bale at the bottom to pay homage to Assassin's Creed though. And at the top is sunk in how much work this took to make this mountain a reality, and to be honest, I barely contribute to it at all. I then spent some time enchanting books, and one cool enchantment this mod pack adds that I wanted to highlight was the ability to bone meal something using a hoe. I also then made some improvements to my armor as they were pretty basic, and you're also able to put different types of protection onto one piece. And don't quote me on this, but I think this mod pack removes the level cap for anvils, and theoretically you would be able to make some ridiculous pieces of armor. And with that out the way, it was now time to help and actually build things for the mountain. Actually, I need to upgrade my weapon first. I looked through the quest log and I spent some time making a gem so I could insert it into my Emberblade socket, but it turns out they weren't even compatible with one another. So that's what I get for putting off helping for so long. But I was able to give it to my friend and he was able to use it, so it wasn't a complete waste of time. And like I said before, I barely helped to make this hollow mountain our home, so my friend was now forcing me to contribute. He left the chest full of the blueprints and their material checklist, and I spent some time gathering all of the materials I would need. First up was the nether villager, next up was the regular villager, then I spent some time placing down all of the rest of the houses I showed you just to really liven up the place. And you guys may have been face palming and silently yelling at me to do this, but I finally figured out that thanks to this mod pack, I would be able to put a sword in my offhand and another sword in my main hand, and I'd be able to dual wield swords, and this effectively doubled my damage output. So I spent some time looking through all the possibilities, and I finally settled on using this other unique sword named the Shadows Thing. And I don't think I showed my skill tree at all ever since I started putting points into it, but this is all the skills that I have invested in so far. I was mainly focusing on the warrior's path, that way I can max out melee damage and health. And because of my recent help with building the village inside of the mountain, I was able to convince my friend that we should now go and defeat the Ender Dragon, and because of my constant pestering, he finally relented and said yes. So I grabbed the Ender Eyes that we had and we headed over, but we were not able to use them, and that's because we would have to collect different eyes to fill the rest of the portal. That is something we did not know until now. We teleported home and grabbed all of the eyes that we managed to stumble across already. We only had 5 eyes and we would need 7 more different ones, so that's what we set out to do. And I actually like this change because although it is slightly annoying, it does heavily encourage exploration and experiencing more of this beautifully crafted mod pack. And my friend was able to find the gravesite filled with the old champion's remains, and for some reason he only had like a quarter full health left. It was probably because he knew he was going to meet death once again anyway, so he just chose to make it easier for us. My own friend proved to be more of a challenge to me than the former champion was, but the frenzy shade that possessed the champion on the other hand was giving us crazy work. But thankfully I managed to exercise the spirit without any deaths. And my friend and I didn't do a lot of research into proper preparation or what to expect from certain bosses. We would just be like, oh, we have the materials to spawn a new one in, let's do it. So we used the old moon altar to fight the returning knight, and he pretty quickly showed me that I had to take him seriously as when he one-shot me with one of his attacks. It was real easy though when the boss was aggroed on my friend and I was once again able to deploy the backshot strategy. And I don't mean to call my friend out, but I just think it's funny because there was a time where he died and he accidentally teleported me to him instead of the other way around. Funnily enough, he actually did this twice, but all things considered, we were able to conquer yet another boss. We summoned the boss again, and I forget if there was a reason for this. It was either because we needed to do it again to make an item or something, or because we wanted some redemption, and knowing us, it was honestly probably the latter reason. And for reasons I'll go over later, exploring the sand biome was pretty memorable and crazy to me. First, I was able to find a normal Minecraft desert temple, and I lost the footage to what exactly happened in there. But then I found the new and better desert temple, but if you can't tell by the world generation, the server crashed once again. When we loaded back in, I was set back a little bit, but it was no big deal. My friend and I explored the temple together, and I felt like James Bond when I was gliding in from the top. And this was really cool, as in order to progress throughout the structure, you would need to solve the puzzles that were left in the temple. This was the only way to go forward, as if you notice, we have mining fatigue, so we couldn't just break the blocks. Or that would be the case if I didn't have the glove which gave me haste, so who needs brains when you have bronze? We continued through the temple not at all intended, breaking through sections as needed, and I was able to get another mending book and even a god apple. There was another section with more loot, and I warned my friend not to jump down this hole and set off the TNT by accident, so you could imagine the emotions I felt when I heard him set off the TNT. but to his defense somewhat, he was on the phone and wasn't able to hear me. And this is what was interesting to me, as this was the first desert biome I've come across the whole game, and it was loaded with different structures. There was another better sand temple, and another better sand temple, and another better sand temple. I think there was even a village too. And it was pretty much the same thing every time without the TNT blowing up, so I won't bore you guys. And I could have sworn that one of us got another eye from one of these temples, but I think I'm just blind and can't find the footage anywhere. And speaking of cool structures, I continued to explore around when I saw this thing on the map that I haven't seen before. I didn't see anything on the ground with me, so naturally I started a tower up, and it actually turned out to be the Altar of the Lich, which was another boss. But in order to spawn them, you need to find 3 of their staff fragments around the world in different structures, and we only ended up ever finding 2, so sadly we never got to fight them. And like I mentioned before, we're some real degenerates, so these last 14 hours of playtime were all in one session. Now I don't remember why we decided to play for this long. It was supposed to be another normal like 3-hour session maybe, and it's funny to think about it because I wasn't too tired despite staying up well past when I usually go to sleep. But you best believe as soon as I got off, all of that fatigue sunk in at once and I needed to go to sleep bad. I then found this Illager fortress type of thing, and I knew there was going to be nothing really noteworthy inside as I explored the structure before in a different world. But I just wanted a different change of pace from sweating against bosses, and I just wanted to mop the floor with everyone inside. And I was lucky enough to find an igloo, but I was also unlucky enough to where there wasn't a basement inside of it, and I didn't even know they could spawn in without one, so I tore down the place looking for it until I realized there simply wasn't one here. My friend accidentally started a raid on a village he came across, so of course I went over to help out, and we were able to successfully defend everyone from the Illagers. However, we were not able to save them from the zombies, and some of them were now infected. And on the mini-map, we saw that there was one villager left, and they probably saw our faces already. My friend and I knew we couldn't leave them alive and let them spread word of our failures as protectors, so we found them sleeping and tried waterboarding them, but that had no effect. So I figured in true US fashion, I might as well just bomb them. And now there was no evidence left as to what happened at this village. And I don't know what my friend was doing to have so much bad omen, but he started another raid. And this one had a few more noticeable moments. We had to cut a tree down to get some sneaky Illagers, and there was this intense showdown between an Illager and a golem. So we ended up giving the iron golem some help so he could finish the job himself. And this raid defense went well to where we didn't have to put down any of the villagers. And back home I was able to make a netherite diamond helmet, and now I was fully rocking the matching set. I threw some enchantments on it, and you guys could pause it and check for yourselves what exactly I put on there. I went to go do some more mining in the nether, but not actually for netherite. I was looking for something to test myself and see how far I've truly come. And all of a sudden it popped up on my screen, the Decaying King. Now yes, my friend and I have put this boss down probably around 5 times up to this point, but this time it was only me and I was putting up a great fight. His attacks didn't hurt nearly as much as they did before, and now I was able to stand and bang with him, and I managed to defeat him without any deaths, and I was rightfully so ecstatic about this. And still not having all of the eyes for the portal, my friend took care of making the eyes that you can craft, while I went ahead to hopefully find the remaining ones. I was pretty quickly able to find a better jungle temple, but sadly no eye to be found. But with a 90% chance to get another eye, we decided to fight the Wither. And by this point, we were pretty stacked with our gear, and no joke, able to put down the Wither in 14 seconds. And supposedly, there's like a 30% chance of getting an eye from a buried treasure chest, but we were just getting real unlucky, I suppose. Whenever one of us came across a buried treasure chest, we would have the other teleport in the hopes that one of us got the eye, but that never ended up happening. And we probably found up to 5 treasure chests up to this point, and nothing. But in order to make up for this unsuccessfulness, the game made sure I found this igloo that was detached from the rest of the snow, and to my surprise it actually had a basement, and there was one more eye that we needed in the chest inside. I kept searching for another better jungle temple, and I was able to find one along with its respective eye. And in this jungle temple I also found a cool way to get a lot of XP. I call it the try not to crash your game, where you'd break a ton of infested blocks with your hammer and spawn in a bunch of silverfish, and then you would squash them all before your PC explodes. I mean, look at how much levels I was able to get from this strategy. After all that searching, we now had enough various eyes to fill the rest of the end portal, and now it was time to go to the end. Oh, actually, we're still missing an eye. Thankfully, my friend had marked another better desert temple on his exploration journey, so that's where we headed, and we used the same strategy of breaking through the pyramid to find the loot room, and we were able to both get an eye this time around. It only took us 6 temples. We headed back and placed the final eye, and I jumped straight in. Now, I probably should have waited to let the new dimension load, as once again we crashed. This was the story of the playthrough if you couldn't tell. And with the portal now filled, we waited some time before stepping in. I gave my homie a kiss on the lips and told him I loved him before we stepped in. We bridged over and made our way to the center island, where it never gets old seeing the ender dragons spawn in like this. We did the usual of shooting the beacons and towering up to destroy any of the ones we couldn't get with the bow. I glided down to the middle, and every time the dragon perched, we would slash away at its belly. There was never any close calls, it was all just waiting for the end dragon to perch so we could do damage, and just like that, we easily freed the end. Now, we forgot to bring torches, so we couldn't grab the egg just yet. We went through the gateway and started to explore the new revamped end. There was a lot of cool new biomes and structures that we got to see, and we did the usual exploring of end cities and stuff like that. And even though I didn't need pretty much any of the loot, the goblin within me couldn't resist not grabbing it. We found a ship, and I now had my own elytra, and it actually comes with mending and unbreaking already on it, so that's pretty neat. And I redeemed some completed quests, and that gave me a dragon egg as well as a standard elytra. My friend was now performing a ritual in front of my eyes and was able to turn our regular elytras into these crystallite ones, but for some reason it got rid of the enchantments on them, but I couldn't care less about it because this mod pack has the do a barrel roll mod installed, and using it just makes me sick. Now, I know you can disable the mod, but I just want to complain. Plus, I've been using my trusty glider for so long that I couldn't just turn my back on it. Next up was another boss. My friend once again did another ritual to start spawning the Blackstone Golem. He was extremely easy to do damage to, and tell me this part isn't cool, where he tries to fling me off of the platform we were on, and I just used my trusty glider to glide back to him and just bop him. But with all the grinding that we've been doing, I wanted to do something that was more peaceful to me, so I started fishing. And just like me in real life, that didn't last too long, as soon we were fighting the Fallen Icon boss, and we were able to withstand damage and dish it out. And like I said before, we didn't do any research, and we were quite surprised when the boss had a second phase. And his second phase, the Harbinger of Moonlight, was not a trivial challenge by any means, but we managed to get through it relatively easily. And now it was the Monarch of Chaos's turn, and this boss was trivial. The hardest part was having the deafening thunder sounds in my headphones. I had to turn that all the way down. Next up, we threw the Orb of Chaos into the sky and summoned the Daystalker and the Night Prowler. We split up and worked on one boss each. I got the task of defeating the Night one, and I was able to put down my boss first. With their defeat, their other half regained health, so I went over to help out, and we were speed running through these bosses extremely easy. And after all this time, I finally decided it was time to upgrade our enchanting power. I chose the seashells because we knew the location of an ocean monument already, so it would be easy to get all of the necessary resources to make them. And I believe there are even better bookshelves than this, but I think they require way more effort than what I wanted to give at the time. I also made the bookshelf that allows treasure enchantments, so that means I'd be able to get mending from the enchantment table now. And I really wish I went through the effort of upgrading the enchanting table sooner. I mean, look at this sword I enchanted. From one enchantment, I was able to get Fire Aspect 3, Looting 3, Mending, and some other enchantments that I presume are good. I could even begin to think what even higher level enchants would grant you. I think we are now discussing how much more we wanted to do, as the original plan was only 100 days or 33 hours in real time, and now we were over 50 hours in, and we still had so much more to go still. We decided we would just finish the main quest line and call it a wrap. So we went to the end and headed to an obsidian altar that we found, and we easily beat the obsidiolith. And keeping it in the end, we made our way to a cool looking biome and made the summoning pillar for the eye. And with the eye now summoned, we were able to use this pillar my friend had, which gave us the ability to fly, and that made the boss fight a whole lot easier. And this fight was pretty anticlimactic, as there was no real challenge to us at this point. I was able to redeem the rewards from the quest line, and I was able to get these ridiculous twin swords. And with my new weapon upgrades, I wanted to see what my power level was at now, and it was safe to say that it was pretty high, as I was able to defeat wardens solo without any worry. And it's funny because I didn't remember how exactly the series ended. So it turns out I went to a jungle temple and I used my hammer to break a ton of blocks, thus also spawning in a bunch of silverfish, which eventually caused the server to crash. And if you haven't noticed, this is an older version of Prominence, and there was a recent update which features a ton of new additions, overhauls, fixes, etc. And my friend and I definitely want to experience that one, and we have an idea on how to do so. But that won't be for a while, as I have a few more mod packs I need to edit first, and by then there may be a newer version out too, but definitely stay tuned. But there we have it. That was 50 hours in Prominence 2, and if you're still here, I really do appreciate you watching the video until the end. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And if there's any questions, comments, concerns, or snarky remarks, leave them below and I'll get back to you. Thank you once again, and have a great rest of your day.